Welcome back to the Leadership and the Environment podcast. And today I've got on Josh Spodek with me for part two of our conversation. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to finding out how your personal challenge went. And just as a quick recap, it was to turn off the fridge in your apartment for up to a week. And you were interested to see kind of how that would impact your cooking and eating habits. And I believe part of the time you were away as well on a trip to your mum's house. So yeah, please tell me what happened. How did it go?
Well, it was mixed. Overall it went very well, but there were some challenges I couldn't get over. Let's see, I have to reconstruct some of it in my memory. Yeah, I think because my sister works with the farmers markets, and she was leaving at one point, and they were getting rid of a whole bunch of what they were going to compost, like the leaves, like the beet green leaves and the carrot leaves. And she was like, oh, my brother uses that stuff. So she got like 30, 40 pounds of the stuff. And so I ended up bringing that home. I had tons and tons of like stuff in, and I was like, there's no way I can finish this in time, but it's perfectly good and it's free. So it's like hard for me not to get it all. So with several days or maybe a week before planning to unplug the fridge, I'm thinking there's no way I can do this. I can't finish all this food. So nonetheless, I go into I'm not going to buy any more food. So in that time, so I get through most of it. Some of it actually from some place I had a bunch of bananas, which were, some store was like going to get rid of them. And they were not yet full on mushy, but I'd frozen them. So I'm like, well, crap, I can't leave those in the freezer. What am I going to do? So I'm thinking I can't finish this stuff. So I go full on eating all the green leafy stuff. I think you can eat that to your heart's content and it's never going to be fattening or unhealthy. It's just, that's my belief. I could be off. So I'm eating more greens than usual, which is fine, delicious. And I realized that the trip to my mom's house was going to ride my bike there. Well, that's a good place to eat bananas. So I'm thinking if I can I'll let them thaw out in the bag as I'm riding, which I did. And somehow I made it to where I finished everything. And if you saw how much food was in there before, that I was able to finish eating or put on the bike to ride with. So I had like a lot of bananas and a lot of other vegetables that I was like, oh, I can bring them with me. And that worked actually pretty well because, so the original plan was to ride to my mom's house. It's 100 miles away, but that's by car and bikes can't take all the highways. And in any case, there's a really nice scenic route Bike 9 I learned about. There's a bike route and it's like, it's mostly regular roads, but there's a little picture of a bike and a little number 9. And it actually goes from New York City or the George Washington Bridge all the way up to Canada along the Hudson River. So she's northwest. So I was going to go north and then west. So it ends up being 120 miles by bike.
Wow. So
I'm riding along and it's hilly and it's hard. And the last time I rode 100 miles in a day was the 80s, as far as I can remember. I'll turn 50 next year. So I'm riding along and at Bear Mountain is where 9W is where I leave that route, that well-marked route. And I'm gonna have to go west at this point. And at this point I realized I'm gonna have to look at the map all the time because it's not a marked route. So that means I have to stop and get out the phone and
eat a banana.
It's been pretty hilly and it's going to get more hilly. So as I'm riding, I should mention I've stopped a couple times along the way at these stunningly beautiful little towns. There's one part where the path went off the street and there was like a packed dirt road that went along the river at the base of these cliffs. And it was really just beautiful. It was a perfect day for riding. And there's riders out, but not too many. Although there's also a lot of the route is on regular roads and there's tons of trash. I mean, just everywhere. I probably didn't go more than 5 yards without passing trash for almost the entire route. And I'm of course looking at this stuff because I'd rather see it than not see it if it's there. I'd rather it not be there, but if it's there, I'd rather know that it's there. Mm-hmm. Even that place where it was that packed dirt path, there were still wrappers here and there. So that was really unpleasant. So I'm at Bear Mountain, and it's time to look for the turn to start going west. And I call my mom and I say, well, I got a couple possibilities here. One is I can go with the original plan. I'm now 7 hours into the ride. And that means that it's not going to be light for me to go. I'm less than halfway there.
Wow.
So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I've stopped a couple times and I'm old and I can't go as fast as I used to. And it's more hilly than I expected. Mm-hmm. And the bike has got all the stuff on it because it's like kind of heavy.
All this food.
And I haven't ridden in a long time. Oh yeah. And the day before I did my Turkish get-ups, and the day before that I did lifting. So my legs are like not so full of energy either. So I call her and I say 3 options that I thought of so far. One is I can keep going. If that happens, I'm almost certainly going to get lost once or twice. And she's going to have to come, or she or my stepfather are going to have to come and pick me up. Now that's going to introduce, I was going to stay at the house and there'd be some measure of social distancing, but in a car, that's difficult. And I don't like the idea of riding and getting picked up. So, although I do like the idea of seeing my mom and stepfather in person. So that's option one. Option two is I noticed that I'm not that far from West Point. And I have a couple friends, I guess I could say, these colonels who've been podcast guests of mine at West Point. I thought, I could call them, maybe hang out with them for a bit. And there's a Metro North, a train station not too far from here. And so that would be like a 60, 70 mile ride, and I'd take the train back in. Option three came to me as I was calling her. I looked at the route and I was at mile 50.0. And that told me if I simply went back the way I came, that would be a 100-mile day. I could declare victory. And that's what I ended up doing. So I ended up riding back home. And so I did a 100-mile day, and it was brutal. Like the end of it, I didn't think I would make it because I'm riding back at night. And there were long stretches on these hills where I was in the bottom gear of the bike, like riding slower than walking, and not sure if I could make it. And so you have to dig deep, and you just say like, oh, I'm going to go one more half mile. All right, one more half mile. And then eventually make it to the city, and then I made it all the way back. And boy, did I pay for it the next couple of days. I was super sore. So, okay. So now I get back home and the fridge is unplugged. I unplugged it that morning, and I got this stuff. I got some food with me. Now I was going to be at my mom's house and the fridge was going to be empty. So now I'm thinking, all right, I can make it for a long time without getting any stuff that has to be refrigerated. But a couple things. When I talked to you the first time, there was not a cold spell. It was a cold spell. I think that the wildfires out west supposedly made the East Coast temperature lower. But then that passed and it was warm. So leaving stuff out wasn't going to work as well. I couldn't leave stuff out as long. The other thing was that, well, here's what did it. The next evening, I'm walking home. Oh, I got to tell you about this program that New York City is doing. I think it was for the pandemic, but maybe for other reasons as well. But there's a program that they were doing that a bunch of places, mostly schools, were set up as distribution places that no one would be turned away. Anyone who came in and said, I'm hungry and I could use some food, they'll give them a bag of, a mix of food and doof. So each bag there is a little plastic bag that would have an apple or an orange or a peach, mm-hmm. A bag of baby carrots, then some doof, which would be like a bag of chips. Then there'd be something in a little plastic container, often applesauce or hummus. How do I know about this? Well, I know about the program because there was news about it, but I also know what's in each thing because I'm guessing mainly homeless people get this stuff, or at least the homeless people who get it leave it by the ground. Like they don't eat the apple, or I don't know. There are a lot of times I see on the ground this bag and the apple and the carrots are in it.
Right.
Oh, and there's usually 8 ounces of milk. So I've been picking up, the listeners can't see this. Oops, the listeners can't see this, but this is one of the apples. See, this apple is one of these little red delicious I wouldn't get normally, but this was left by someone on the ground and I took it home. Right. And I was making vinegar with them because vinegar is pretty clean. I mean, like clean stuff. But then I know where the places are near me that give these out because nearby there is where this stuff is left. So the Friday after that ride, I'm walking home by one of these distribution places, and they are throwing out hundreds of oranges. And they're like the free ones, so they're not like the grade A ones that make into the supermarket, but they're throwing away hundreds and hundreds of oranges.
Right.
And I happen to have with me a bag, and the bag that I, get all my, that I've used for groceries since like the 90s. And I fill my bag up with oranges. So I take home, I think 50 oranges. Now there's no way I can eat 50 oranges before they start going bad. So I realized I decide to put them in the freezer and turn on the fridge. So I made it 36 hours,
okay.
Not a week. And I'm just going back and forth in my head of like, what can I do about these oranges? The most I can bring home is 50. I don't think I was going to go back there and get like another 50. And now I put them in the freezer and turn it on. Oh, I got to go back a step. I forgot. I had a lot of beet greens before I left, and those weren't going to last when I was up at my mom's house at the time when I thought I was still going to make it. So we're now back before I left. And what am I going to do with these beet greens? And I decided I'm going to try an experiment. I've made sauerkraut many times, and I really love sauerkraut, homemade. And I thought, well, beet greens, cabbage, kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just do the same process to make sauerkraut as I did to make, and I'll just try that process with beet greens. Oh my God, unbelievably delicious.
Oh, nice. I mean,
so I just, that's how I got rid of some of the last of the green leafy vegetables that I couldn't finish on my own, was fermented them.
Mm-hmm.
And really good. Like, I'm going to start doing this with beet greens all the time. And I'm now going to start, I actually have from the library, I got a book on fermentation. So I'm going to start fermenting things a lot more, which is how this all got started with Unplugging the Fridge, was that reading that article in Low Tech magazine saying how lots of other cultures ferment much more than we do because we refrigerate a whole lot of stuff.
Mm.
So, and now I'm thinking about taking these oranges and seeing if I can make vinegar out of them, which I should be able to. So I made it 72 hours. I learned a couple of huge lessons. One was the sauerkraut, beet leaf kraut.
Beet leaf kraut
is really delicious. And
mm-hmm.
I thought there's something special about cabbage, but now I realize vegetables you can just ferment. And this book is cementing that. So I'm going to ferment more. Number two, well, this isn't something I learned, but I got these oranges. I think that I think it's a net win that these things were being thrown out.
Yeah.
And it's one thing when someone saves them special for me. I don't like to do that because then they start getting extra. Because the addiction speaks and it says, oh, just get extra. Josh, like, oh, take the plastic bag because Josh will figure out a way to use it, even though like I'm not looking for extra bags. So, but this wasn't that. This was, I don't know what they're doing throwing away all those oranges. They weren't even composting them. They're outright throwing them out.
Oh.
So I got 50 oranges, now down to probably 40 or 35. It's also gotten cooler now. So I'm more prepared to turn it off. Like, I'll definitely turn it off, unplug it again well before December this time. Probably pretty soon. So I will do it earlier. And I also got a lot of insight into other people, how they take on challenges and can't always do the full challenge.
Mm.
And I always find it rewarding to hear what they are able to do, even if they didn't pull off the whole thing.
Definitely. And I mean, it was still a win because it's still a affirmation of your environmental values. You just applied those values slightly differently when you saw all those oranges. You thought,
well, yeah, I mean, that was a clash of values of keeping the fridge off versus giving up the oranges. And yeah, so I went that way. I wasn't going to leave the oranges. And so, yeah, I don't know if I just put oranges and water together, like I put apples and water together. Put apples and water and you'll get vinegar. It helps if you have some old vinegar that you can put a little in so that the bacteria and yeast will get in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just use what's in the air, I read that there's a 50-50 chance that you'll always get vinegar. It may not taste good. So if you use an old vinegar with the living culture in it and put that in, you'll start it off with something that you like the flavor of. So I happened to get lucky the first time I did it, and I've been seeding the new vinegar with the old vinegar ever since, and I love it. So now I'm going to try it with oranges. And I looked it up a bit and I didn't find anything. I found a lot of stuff about if you have vinegar and put oranges in it,
Right.
then it'll infuse. But I want to start from oranges.
So it's like a brand new experiment. So the beet kraut went well.
Yeah.
And we're orange vinegar TBC.
Yeah. And we'll see. Yeah. I've never seen orange. I've seen apple cider vinegar. I see grape or wine vinegar everywhere. And I've seen that you can use, supposedly you can use all sorts of fruit. People use pineapple and stuff, but they always take existing vinegar. And then most stuff I see on YouTube or when I search, it's like taking existing vinegar and giving it flavor, not starting from scratch. But you know what? I got 50 free oranges.
What else are you going to do?
Yeah. So I call it victory. And yeah, had I not had the conversation, I would not have tried. And frankly, here's another thing that was a big victory for me, was that many times in the days leading up to the ride to my mom's house, or in attempting to go to my mom's house, many times I felt like, I can't possibly get through this. I'll just do it later. I'll start later. Mm-hmm. So even the 72 hours, even the 36 hours felt like more progress. And I'm looking forward to really switching over to more fermenting, seeing how, just making it a regular thing, a regular practice to have the refrigerator off for 4 or 5, 6 months of the year.
Yeah. Fermenting is meant to be really good for you, like health-wise, isn't it? It's like meant to be good for all your like gut bacteria and.
Yeah, that's what they say, and it's fun. It's I mean, as with any skill, the first bunch of times it took me a long time, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And the first sauerkrauts weren't particularly great, and then I get the hang of it. It's you learn what not to do and what to do, and it becomes easier. And there are times when I've made vinegar on the phone with someone. I got the earphones in, I got my hands free, so I'm just chopping away. What does it take to chop apples? It's not like a whole lot of attention. So it doesn't take any extra time. I could do it right now. I'm not going to. Well, here I can't because I got the microphone and I want to.
Just in the background of the chopping board. So it sounds like then it was a bit of a mixed bag of experiences, like maybe to start off with a little bit stressful, is that right? As you were kind of, or maybe it's like a positive stress, you were in planning mode, thinking what to do, how am I going to do all this stuff, and then obviously there was that clash and uncertainty around what to do when you came across those oranges, but overall like a positive experience that you enjoyed and that you are going to take the next step with at some point, which is trying to turn off your fridge freezer again.
Yeah. You didn't outright ask what the emotional journey was like, but I'll tell you anyway. That it wasn't, let's see, it was a challenge, but it was, it was an adventure. And it was like, yeah, it's this constant thing of like, am I going to really give a shot at living by my values? And it's really learning more about myself. After all this time of all the things I've already done, there's still much more to find out. It feels like I'm connecting, this felt, because that article in Low Tech Magazine featured Vietnam, I keep thinking about Vietnam, and they have all the fish sauces and stuff like that, which is not my taste. But all the not flying, there's been no loss of adventure and cultural discovery for me. And that's what this is really, it started off with trepidation, not trepidation, it started off with enthusiasm, like when I was talking to you, and also a bit of like, what's around the corner? I can't really tell. And then a feeling of like, this, I can't do it. I bit off more than I could chew. I don't know what you call that. It's not anxiety.
Overwhelmed?
Yeah, overwhelmed.
Yes.
And trepidation. And then as it started coming together, I was like, oh, I can do this. I can unplug the fridge without risk of anything. So it's like, oh, discovery. And then accomplishment. And then, yeah, once I got those oranges, it was like a mix of disappointment with, it's not quite justification. I have a blog post that I wrote a long time ago, almost 10 years ago. It says, I have low standards the first time. I think it's very easy to set a goal for yourself that's too high, and then you never start.
Mm-hmm.
Or you start and you don't reach the goal and you give up. And I found that I do much better if I just drop the standards the first time, do it, decrease the judgment, and just, if I started, if I've tried it all, if I've acted on it, that to me is success. So by that measure, a measure that existed long before I took on this challenge for myself, I succeeded very well. And I anticipate that it'll become more and more natural.
Yeah.
I was thinking about unplugging it before this call. As it turned out, the call I was on just before this one went a little long. There's a city council member that has caught on to my picking up garbage, and I'm getting now increasing calls from politicians looking for sustainability leadership help.
That's fantastic.
So it was not the council member himself, but a helper. And we'll see how the experience of doing this stuff translates into being able to help others at government, corporate levels.
That's huge.
That's very satisfying.
That's really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that grunt work is, I think, translating into stuff that people recognize as beyond. It's not just one person doing, it's not just what one person doesn't matter, or hoping that little things add up, but developing the skills and experiences and beliefs of effective leadership.
Yeah. And instilling them in other people. That's amazing. So it sounds like it was maybe quite a literal solitary journey with regards to not going to mum's.
Yeah.
But was there any other kind of interaction with other people? Could you share your experience with anyone?
Let's see. I don't know how close this relates. Last night I did an online webinar. I guess that's redundant. A webinar with showing how to make my famous no packaging vegan stew.
Mm-hmm.
In it, I pulled out the beet green kraut, just kind of spontaneously. I was like, oh, here, I got this. Have I talked to people about it? No, I mean, I don't think I really did. I knew that I would be talking to you and your audience about it. I think it was more of a solo thing. I mean, I live on my own, and unlike before the pandemic, I don't invite people over. I used to invite people over several nights a week to make my stews with, but that's not happening now. Yeah, it hasn't seemed to have affected other people so much, but this is the beginning of something, so it's definitely going to make my conversations. I posted it on my blog. Oh no, I didn't post about did I post about the unplugging the freezer? I'm not sure. I forget, but I posted about the bike ride.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Awesome. And when do you think you might be planning to turn off your freezer? You said now it's a bit colder, it might be relevant. Yeah. Or is there anything else that has it sparked you to think of other than more beet kraut?
Well, the orange vinegar.
Mm.
Yeah, there's also the compost is an issue. I put I keep a bowl on my countertop, and I put apple seeds and apple stems in there, and then when that fills up, I put that into a bag in the freezer, and when that fills up, I take it to the farmer's market, to where they collect food scraps to be composted industrially. Keeping it on the countertop, it hasn't attracted bugs, but if I don't have a freezer to put it in, I got a couple options. One is to find some way of storing it otherwise, some bigger container that still keeps it cold somehow, or to go to the farmer's market more often. Going to the farmer's market more often, possible, but it's like 1.5 mile round trip walk. I often go to Union Square anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be pickup near me, closer to me. Anyway, that's just something to think about, is how to handle the food scraps.
Yeah, so you've got to think through a few more options before you can just turn that plug off. Oh,
on the contrary. In order to find that's the old way.
Okay.
Is to figure out how to solve everything before doing it. That's not a successful way to solve problems. It's I mean, you try to foresee what you can, but then start. And you want to solve the problem, face the problem, not some future possible problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if I really wanted to find out what I can do, I might just do this after we hang up, is I might just go unplug the fridge and force myself to do something with those oranges. Talking about it makes it less fun. It's, I mean, when I actually do it, it's just like, you know, going over and unplugging the thing. It's like, it's kind of fun. It's like, I mean, what happens if it goes bad? Like I just plug it back in again, no problem.
Yeah, small cost.
Like, how bad is it? Like anyone can do this. Anyone can just unplug their fridge. Oh man, my mom and stepfather, they're just two people. They eat significantly less than I do because they're not doing burpees every day.
All right.
The amount of food, their fridge is like the size of my kitchen. Not that big, but it's pretty big. And the freezer's filled with all the stuff. And the cupboards, it's like so much food. And I grew up living that way and just thinking you had to have a lot of food in your fridge all the time, and the cupboards and so forth. But when you're just eating fresh stuff, like they have all this stuff that they buy, and maybe 5 years from now they'll use it. And I'm not going to get new stuff until I finish it, especially because I'm eating seasonally. So I got to finish what I got so I can get the new stuff. And it's much more fresh fruits and vegetables, not canned and so forth and boxed and bagged. So in the cupboard, they have stuff going back forever. And in the fridge, they have stuff, they probably throw away a lot of stuff. You know, there's this common pattern that they do a lot, but everyone does a lot, which is, I'll get this and I'll get the reusable kind so that I don't feel like I'm getting waste. And then later they're like, oh, I haven't used this. Well, I did my best. I'll just throw it out, but I tried. And so their conscience is cleared, even though if they really thought about it, they knew that they would never use it. Like once when I was staying at my mom's house over this pandemic, we ordered pizza because now my mom's pizza crusts that she makes at home are among the best crusts I've ever had. And it's a fun thing. Like she gives you the dough and you have to roll it out and then you put the toppings on. For me, it's all the fresh fruits and vegetables and nutritional yeast because that makes it nice, gives it some extra flavor. And they put on meat and stuff like that, but that's their business. Well, she heard that restaurants weren't going to do so well, so she wanted to go out of our way to get some restaurant food. So we got some pizza. And we got pizza from two different places, both of the restaurateurs she knew. At one of them, I brought containers and I said, can we put them in these containers? And they said, yeah. So they did. The other place wasn't so into that. And my mom and stepfather aren't quite as into taking on these challenges as I am. They're a little more comfort minded. Mm-hmm. So they're like, well, we'll get in these boxes, but we'll reuse those boxes. I'm like, something in the back of my head was like, when have I ever thought to myself, if only I had a pizza box, then
would you carry it?
I knew that was the addiction speaking.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the heroin addict who's just like, just one more time and then I'll quit. And so we had these pizza boxes sitting there in the kitchen for a while. And then finally they're like, you know, we tried, but we're not going to get to use these. I'm like, there was no chance that those pizza boxes were ever going to be used. And if we'd asked them, we could have gotten them. But they're like, Josh, you do your environmental thing. We support you, but we're not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
As if the exhaust coming out the back of the car was just like disappearing. Like as if we didn't know where the greenhouse gases were coming from. As if the plastic that they took to the dump was benign. You know, they're like, oh, we don't want to hurt anyone. Well, it's not your intent that matters, it's your behavior. So that's part of why I'm happier back here, because I don't have to like have the friction from them. That was just frustrating to me, to know that your behavior you could do something that will hurt people less, but they do stuff that will hurt people more. And if you suggest that the difference between one and the other is that it will hurt people, they're like, why do you make us try to feel guilty? Or why do you try to make us feel guilty? I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I mean, what it ends up in is I don't share the stuff with them. And then they get me, then they're like, oh, you look at us. And I'm like, whatever. But this stewardship is just, it's a joy. It really is. I wish I could convey, and maybe I'm conveying, I don't know. I wish I could give people the feeling, the joy behind, as far as I can tell, and not being a parent, I can't really be sure, but I think it's the joy of like helping your baby and seeing the baby grow and knowing that, yeah, sometimes you get some poop on your hands, but also the baby's going to walk down the aisle one day or get a diploma. And the alternative is the baby's absolutely helpless. You could just ignore the baby for a couple of days and then not have to worry about the baby anymore because
Mm.
it'll die. But we don't do that. It's like unconscionable even to think that. It's uncomfortable even to say that. So if the baby is a person somewhere in Indonesia that's going to get flooded with plastic because we're wantonly using it, and that's where the flow ends up going, it connects me more to them to not use plastic here, or to unplug my fridge and produce a little less coal or consume a little less coal here, than to fly over there and see them in person and have some superficial connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see why then it is more joyful. But I guess it's hard, isn't it? Everybody has to go on their own behavior change journey. And the more you try and push people along, sometimes the more rigidly they stick their heels into the ground. They have to take their own time to come across it.
Well, you could say that, but I think a lot of people want, all right, some people absolutely don't want help, or some people, it's not help. It would be a burden, and they really don't want, they're like, let it all burn. Mm-hmm. And they really do deep down in their heart feel like, when I die, the universe ends and it doesn't matter. Okay. That's not the person I'm trying to lead. But there are a lot of people who I think want to change and want help. And I don't know, they download my podcast without me asking them. Someone's, I mean, the numbers keep going up. So someone's listening, and it's more than just waiting for them to come to you. You can behave and communicate in ways to make them feel comfortable sharing that they want this. People have if you had a relative on heroin and, you know, they've sold all their stuff and they're out on the streets, probably somewhere along the way, you might not just simply wait for them to stop. It might be that you go to them and they say, there's no problem. I still have more stuff to sell. I can still sell my shoes. Mm-hmm. Then you might let them keep going and say, well, they got to hit rock bottom. I'm not going to help them. But sometimes there are ways to approach people and help them. And the addiction that we have, it's different. Every addiction is unique. Probably heroin is probably different than alcohol, which is different than sugar. But to these creature comforts, man, people are so addicted. I think that a lot of them want to be awakened, want to feel self-empowered, and act on that. My goal is not to get them to stop using plastic. My goal is for them to want to do something that's already in them that they want to do but haven't figured out how to do. That's my definition of leadership. It's helping people do what they wanted to do already but haven't figured out how.
Yeah, and like you said, that's meaningful to them. And I guess for me anyway, you've definitely opened up my eyes to seeing the world in a different way. And, you know, the way that you talk about things very emotively as well, using words like addiction, it does help you to then, and doof instead of food, it does help you to see your usual environment in a new light. And that's definitely the first step of the behavior change for me, because if you don't see it, and I didn't see it before, like I knew the environment, there was a problem and a crisis, but I didn't see it, and now I see it. And that's really interesting to me, and is like the start of my kind of behavior change journey.
Yeah, and you're probably a good case, because you found me on Instagram, if I remember right, and came to that webinar. That's a clear sign that you put time and attention and focus into. That one was on Sid Chaz, it was on personal growth. So you had signaled to me an interest in personal growth. And so that led to our conversations, which led to me sharing some of the stuff, and that led to you applying some of the stuff that I shared with you. And I don't think that you felt like I was pushing you, or you probably didn't feel like I was leading you. I was just helping you with what I picked up from you that you wanted. And that's led to this podcast. So that's, to me, I wasn't waiting for you to, I wasn't waiting for anything. You came to me.
Yeah. I self-selected. Yeah.
Right. So there's leadership stuff out there. There's leadership opportunities. I think there's a lot of people, when they come out and complain about this and that and this and that, they aren't complaining because they want to bring you down. I don't think. They're probably complaining because they think it could be better. And if someone gives them a way to act on it, they'll have less to complain about and more to enjoy. I think we're possibly on the verge of significant change, a cultural shift that people really want. I mean, one option is we can just keep doing what we're doing and just keep pointing fingers at everybody else and saying, like the equivalent of sitting in traffic, in bumper to bumper traffic, and saying everyone else is causing the traffic, but not me. Except everyone else is causing the pollution, but not me.
Yeah.
Or all the science I know says overshoot and collapse meaning not collapse of the economy, collapse of population, which means lots of people dying. I don't like that option. And it seems inevitable if we keep business as usual. Another option is to find the values that undergird cultural shift, behavioral change to where people enjoy stewardship. People enjoy not having so much food in the fridge like all the time, and not having so much stuff. And the big one is having smaller families. And globally, for some reason, whenever someone says that, everyone in this country at least thinks eugenics, and it's like that jump is such that's the addiction talking. They want not to talk about something, so like they'll just throw something out that like, oh, this will stop that conversation in its tracks. But there's role models of countries that have dropped from like 7 children per woman to less than 2 children per woman, creating stability and peace and abundance. Think the opposite of the one-child policy. And where people enjoy things like that, I think that we could achieve that in our lifetimes. And that would be, I'd love to see a world with people enjoying, oh, there's garbage on the ground. I don't know how it got there, but I'm going to pick it up anyway. And then not have to do that for another week because there's just no more garbage on the ground.
Yeah.
And some factory owner saying, stop making this plastic. No one will take it. And we don't even know what to do with the stuff we have in the warehouse. We just stop making it. And then at the oil well, they're like, stop digging, turn it off. We can't do anything with it. No one wants it.
Yeah, I think we are going to get there. Well, we have to at some point. I guess it's just a question of when.
I don't know. Do you play sports? I forget.
No.
There have been games that when I played in college, there are a couple of years when we were very good. We would be in the finals of every tournament. And there were games that we won that against teams that really sucked, and we played down to their level and we barely won. And there are games where we lost and I gave everything I had. There are games that we lost where I did not give everything I had. And they still keep me up at night sometimes. My measure, how people feel, I believe I'm not unique in this, is not a measure of just the outcome. The outcome plays a role. I'd rather win a game than lose a game, if it's a competitive game where I'm playing to win. But it's how did I play relative to my potential? Not just in that game, but all the preparation for it. If I prepared at 80% and we lose by a little bit, that's horrible. That I feel terrible. Now, if I don't care, that's another story. But clean air, clean water, clean land, I care about that. If I do everything I can, whether we make it or not, well, look, we're not going to make it back to the future we imagined before we realized that we could actually heat up the globe and are doing so, that we could actually have more plastic in the ocean than fish and are doing so, that we somehow decided that processes that produce dioxins, okay, we can live with that. So we can't return to that fantasy, but we don't have to go full on and hit the iceberg without at least trying to turn away from it. And if we turn away from the iceberg, we may get a glancing blow and like have a damaged ship, but still not be so bad off. But even then even if the ship goes down, we might be able to save a lot of people. And I would like to do that. I would like to keep our culture. I would like not some Ozymandias future where people are like, oh, look, there once was a society in North America. Like, I want the society to sustain itself, not just North America, but around the world. So yeah, to me, it's less a matter of will we succeed, because there's no hard and fast measure of success. It's predicting the future is really difficult. the success is, have I given all I got in an earnest attempt? And, you know, someone criticized me because I wrote this article in some journal, and I said, this could be a finest hour. And he said, people are dying all over the place. It's not a finest hour situation. And I thought about it. My awareness of that phrase, our finest hour, is from the movie Apollo 13, when the astronauts, 3 astronauts were off in space and there was an explosion and they brought them back alive. But there was at no point until they actually were there alive, retrieved in the ocean after the capsule landed, was it given. And our finest hour does not describe situations where you wake up, it's a beautiful morning and you have a nice breakfast and you look at the sunrise and the birds are chirping. That does seem like a fine hour. But when we say our finest hour, it's when we've pulled some kind of victory out of disaster. And in that sense, we have an opportunity for our finest hour. I'm really going on here. This is I don't know if this is really like podcast material. I feel like I should be on the mall, like talking like I have a dream.
On your soapbox. No, it is. It is very rousing is the word I would use.
I think that, yeah, because the opportunity is for this to be our finest hour. I think with a sustainable, a population of humans that is living sustainably, well below the carrying capacity of the planet, so there's abundance for everyone and resilience. If there's problems, we can handle it, and plenty of innovation and if not material growth, then growth in quality of life. People knowing their neighbors more than flying all over the place, and we get there through beet green kraut and orange vinegar.
Orange vinegar. I'm so curious to see how that turns out for you.
Yeah. I was going to say I could mail you some, and I thought I'm not going to mail it. Actually, this is one of the big things: is I could mail it to you. I could go. Some people would say I could go there and bring it with me. Ah, great! I'll visit you. I'll bring some with me, and you can taste it. So that's extraordinarily wasteful. Mm-hmm. I could also put some in a container and mail it to you. That's still packaging. So I can simply tell you how to do it, and you can do it yourself. And that actually teaches you. And though we're not together in person, we would share a common experience. And I say, oh, but you don't get that in-person time. Well, I'm not less in person overall with people in general. It just means I'm spending more time with people local to me and more time with people local to me and less with people farther away. Now, some might say, oh, but then you don't get the culture exchange that you would have otherwise. I don't know what how much culture exchange people are thinking they're actually getting when they go to these places. And I'm not aware of places that people like that don't become overrun with delightful little cafes, and the economy then has to cater to the tourists, and we don't meet our neighbors. So I'll tell you how it goes. If it goes well, then I suspect you will cut up some oranges yourself. Yes. And make your own vinegar. And
I will.
Yeah. And we won't know exactly how the other one's tastes, but if mine comes out well, you'll keep doing it until it comes out well for you. And
if we chat again in the future and I have my orange vinegar, I will have it on a salad whilst I'm in front of you, and we can enjoy our shared salad orange vinegar experience.
Yes. I can't wait.
Cool. Well, thank you, Josh, so much for that. It was really interesting hearing about your adventure. You know, we were talking about adventure before, and that certainly was an adventure with regards to your personal challenge. Also, a nice way of not getting to see your mum, if that was your goal. And yeah, just for that little rousing speech, you're definitely making me think, what can I do? Can I do more? Can I enjoy it more as well? So thank you very much.
Oh man, thank you. I'm glad that last thing you said was, can I enjoy it more? I think you'll succeed if you keep asking.
Yeah. What a fab conversation with Josh. I really enjoyed hearing about his personal challenge and the literal journey that he went on, and also the journey of values and his decision-making processes. as he said, it was a success, even though he didn't technically meet the parameters of the challenge that he set himself. He still learned a lot, and he tried, and he got further, and he now knows more for next time if he wants to go ahead and try again. I particularly think there are some fantastic mental images that I got with him riding his bicycle, laid down, weighed with bananas, and then coming across these 50 oranges. I don't know how he carried them, like probably putting them in his pockets, in the bag, and then balancing them on his head. I thought that was brilliant. One of the things I got from Josh is his use of emotive language. And he uses quite a few metaphors, actually. I think it's helpful if one metaphor doesn't stick with you, then there's something else. For example, addiction, or a finest hour, or the iceberg. And that is a really useful tool in helping you see things in a different way. I'm definitely going to think about that more, not just with the environment, but perhaps also other behaviors of mine that I want to change or tweak. Because when you start to say things like, that's the addiction showing, you can't help but think, oh, that is those words cause an emotional impact in me. That consequently means that I'm going to think about what I do. And I might do the same as I've done before, but I might also do something different. Very powerful. And this idea as well of, how did I do relative to my potential? Have I given all I've got in an earnest attempt? Some powerful questions to think about and to consider. And lastly, my two things I wanted to end on that made me laugh was his realization there's nothing special about cabbage. Turns out you can make fantastic sauerkraut with these beet greens. And the other thing is, if anybody knows what else you can carry in a pizza box that's not pizza, or when else you might use that pizza box to reuse it instead of just recycle it, then let me know. I'd love to hear your ideas.